Attack of the Christmas Present. My Uncle Billy is just about the coolest person on the planet. He's been everywhere and he knows all kinds of weird stuff. So when I found out that he was coming to our house for Christmas, I couldn't wait. Uncle Billy is fun to be with and he also gives great presents. He gave me a dinosaur egg once and a scarab from Egypt. It's a wooden beetle with a hawk and a snake carved on the bottom. I inked mine and stamped my notebook covers. No one else I know has a scarab, except for my older brother Doug. Uncle Billy gave him one too. Doug is 14, so 2 years older than I am. We both have black hair, brown eyes, and gaps between our front teeth. He is a little bit taller. The day before Christmas, Doug and I were playing checkers. I hate playing checkers with Doug. I like to play fast and see what happens. But Doug sits around and thinks about every and each move. He usually wins too. Doug had been staring at the board forever, trying to figure out what his next move was going to be. I was gazing out the window, waiting. A taxi pulled up to the house. Uncle Billy climbed out of the taxi. He was loaded down with suitcases and some bulging black tote bags. Uncle Billy is tall and thin with curly black hair and he wears thick glasses. I ran outside and hugged him. Then I helped him carry his bags in. Doug just sat at the table still thinking about his next move. He is a very serious game player. We woke up at about 7 o'clock on Christmas morning. Everybody picked a place in the living room to sit. I plunked down between the tree and Uncle Billy. Then Mum took each present from under the tree and put it in front of the person who it was for. We had to wait until she handed out all the presents before we could open up any. Can't I open just one? I asked. I always ask that. You know the rules, Jack. Just wait, Mum said. She always says that. Finally, she finished passing out presents. I could tell just by looking at my pile that I wasn't getting the skateboard that I really wanted. Nothing was going to be the right shape or size, but at least Uncle Billy's present would be interesting. I ripped into the wrapping paper. Pretty soon the floor was covered with paper and ribbon. Mum gave me 3 sweaters, some socks and some underwear. Boring. But I also got a Walkman and a bunch of CDs and some excellent basketball shoes and a computer game called The Troll's Bane. Finally, I got to Uncle Billy's present. I ripped off the silver paper and uncovered a really spooky wooden mask. It had long fangs and 3 eyes and a wild mane of red and white horsehair. It was different. I didn't own anything else like it. No one I knew did either. But I just didn't like it. It was actually creepy. I set it down and watched Doug. He still had a lot of unopened presents. Doug opens presents like he plays checkers. Slowly. He picked up each one and studied the box. Then he undid the tape. Then he pulled off the paper in one piece. Then he studied the present before opening the next one. Sometimes Doug drives me nuts. He got underwear and socks and sweaters too. He got some books and a big set of colouring pencils. And a sketch pad. He also got some good basketball shoes. He acted as if he liked everything. His present from Uncle Billy was wrapped in dark blue paper. He saved it for last. Open it, I yelled. So he opened it very slowly, just to make me suffer. Doug slipped his fingernail under the tape on the back and both ends of the paper. Then he folded the paper up as if he'd use it again. He lifted the lid of the box and found another box inside. He studied it for a while. I jumped up so I could see it too. The box was bright purple and had Japanese writing with some white outlines all over it. On the front, in English, it said, Robot Tag. Through a clear plastic window in the box, I could see what it was. An action figure. I had stopped playing with action figures and Doug had never played with them. This one looked so cool though, I wanted to get my hands on it. It was a big silver robot with spikes around its neck, elbows, waist and knees and chains crossed over its chest. A spike like a rhino's horn stuck up from its helmet. Doug opened the box and pulled the robot out. It was jointed so you could pose it. Doug flipped up the silver grey faceplate to show the scowling face. The robot's mouth was open wide, displaying lots of sharp, pointy teeth. "That one is special," Uncle Billy said, watching us both. "At least, that's what the guy at the old toy shop told me." "It's really cool, Uncle Billy," Doug said. "Thanks." Doug was being polite, but I know him. I could tell he didn't like Robot Tag. For the first time ever, Uncle Billy bought us presents we didn't like. We trooped into the kitchen. Mum made waffles. After breakfast, Uncle Billy said goodbye. He had to catch a plane to India. Doug and I walked to the living room to pack up our presents and take them to our rooms. I picked up the three-eyed mask. What could I do with it? I held it to my face and tried looking through the eyes, but the back wasn't carved out enough for a face to fit in. I couldn't even wear the mask next Halloween. I glanced over at Doug. He was staring at the mask. I looked at Robot Tag. "What a radical robot." "Trade you," Doug said. "Really?" I shouted. "Really?" "All right." I slapped the mask in his hand, then I grabbed Robot Tag. Upstairs in my room, I checked out Robot Tag's joints. His ankles bent, his knees bent, his wrists bent, his fingers bent. He rotated at the waist and his head turned. His arms could go straight up, out to the side, up and forward. He could pose 100 different ways. I staged a fight with some old superheroes I dug out of the closet. Robot Tag beat them all. I left him on top of the dresser when I went to bed. I had just drifted off to sleep when I heard a scuffling, tapping noise. Maybe I'm dreaming, I thought. Then I heard a thump. My eyes opened and I switched on the lamp. Robot Tag was lying on the floor. I figured he must have fallen. I left him there and turned the light out. I pulled the covers tight around me. Then I heard more tap-tap noises. I reached one arm out and groped for the light. When I flicked it on, Robot Tag was still laying on his side, a few inches closer to the bed. I was getting a little freaked out now, but I forced myself to calm down. I have a wild imagination, and I knew it was running away with me. Toys don't come alive. I turned the light off and lay awake, waiting. Then I heard it again. Tap, 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 scuffle, scuffle, scuffle. I clicked the light on fast. Robot Tag was standing up, and he stood only a few feet from my bed. I screamed. Then the action figure moved. It took a step toward my bed, then another. Maybe he has functions that I don't know about, I thought. Maybe I tripped an on-off switch when I set him up on the drawer. I knew the sensible thing to do was pick up the action figure, search for the switch, but I was too scared to move. Robot Tag kept rumbling towards me. His spikes glinted in the light. This was too creepy. I took a deep breath. Then I flung off the covers and jumped out of bed. I ran from the room, slamming the door behind me. I darted across the landing and shoved into Doug's room without even knocking. He was reading one of his Christmas books. He glared at me. "What do you want?" "Robot Tag. He's alive. He came after me," I shrieked. "Don't be dumb," he replied. "He was coming for me," I insisted. "You were dreaming." I grabbed his pajama sleeve. "You have to see this," I said. "I don't want to go back into my room alone." He grumbled, shook his head, but finally he came with me. Robot Tag stood motionless in the middle of the floor. "Ooh, scary," Doug said, rolling his eyes. "He really was chasing me, Doug. Honest," I insisted. Doug sat down and picked up Robot Tag. He turned him over. I slid to the floor next to him. Doug handed me the robot. I searched it for an on-off switch, but I couldn't find one. "He was walking," I said in a small voice. Even I wasn't sure I believed it. Maybe I had been dreaming. "If this is your way of telling me you want to trade back, forget it," Doug said. "You're stuck with him." He stood up. "Now go to sleep." I put Robot Tag in the closet. I lay in bed a long time with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling and listening for more tapping noises. I didn't hear anything. Finally, I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I stretched in bed and sat up. And then I gasped. Robot Tag stood on the dresser. Had Doug sneaked into my room and put him there? No way. How would Doug know to look for him in the closet? I walked over to the dresser and picked up Robot Tag. His eyes were squinting and mean-looking under the faceplate. The spikes around his joints were sharp. Too sharp for a toy, I thought. I threw him back in the closet. Then I put on my new basketball shoes, ran downstairs and ate breakfast. Afterwards, I biked over to my friend Rodney's house to find out what he got for Christmas. By the time I got home, it was almost supper time. I hurried to my room to clean up. I switched on the light. and stopped dead. Robot Tag stood in the center of the floor again. The robot raised one arm, his fingers opened and closed, and the spikes around his neck, elbows, waist, and knees started spinning around like tiny, biting saw blades. Robot Tag took a step, tap, then another step, tap. Then he started moving toward me faster. His faceplate lifted. He gnashed his teeth at me. No way. Was I dreaming this? I started out the door. I turned to slam it behind me, but Robot was too fast. It followed me out into the hallway. His spikes were whirling. His faceplate flipped up. He glared at me. He reached for me. I ran back into my room and slammed the door. Then I yanked open my closet door and searched for something I could use to defend myself. My hockey stick. I grabbed it and whirled around just in time to see wood shavings flying from under the door. Robot Tag was using his whirling spikes to drill a hole in the bottom of the door. A few seconds later, he came crawling through the hole, baring his teeth. I waved the hockey stick at him, hoping I could beat him back, but the robot grabbed the stick with both hands and squeezed. A chunk of stick broke off. I jabbed him with it, and he broke off another piece. My heart was pounding. I had to get away. I jumped up as high as I could over Robot Tag and ran to the door. I yanked it open and ran downstairs. Robot Tag came after me. I could hear his feet flying over the hall carpet toward the stairs. He moved so fast. If I could just make it to the front door. A sudden blur to my right. Robot Tag came sliding down the banister. He thumped to the floor at the bottom of the stairs and whirled around to face me. He snatched at me with his hands, then he lowered his head and aimed his rhino horn right at me. He was about to charge. I tripped on the edge of the living room rug and went downstairs. Gasping for breath, I glanced back at the robot. Tap, tap, tap. I struggled to get up, but I was too late. Robot Tag stood over my face. He raised both his arms and I closed my eyes. I felt his hands slap me on the shoulder. I opened my eyes and the robot grinned.
Tag,
He yelled.
you're it.
Hey dudes, thanks so much for joining me while I read these Goosebumps stories. This was the 10th story from the Goosebumps More and More and More Tales to Give You Goosebumps collection. All Christmas themed, holiday themed Goosebumps stories. Be sure to check out the rest of my Goosebumps stories collection right here on the Leftovers channel. Check out some video game reviews. Check out some action figure toy reviews. We love retro here on the Leftover Culture Review. It's distinctly 90s and there's plenty here for any of you 90s retro fans to check out. Thank you so much for hanging around for the story. Tune in next time for some more Leftover Culture. And of course, you can always head over to the leftoverculturereview.com for as much leftover culture as you can shake a stick at. Thank you and Merry Christmas.